The Friday night rush at Impero had just begun to ease when Marco grabbed my arm in the service corridor. His fingers dug into my sleeve with unusual urgency, his normally composed face tight with something that looked like panic. "Vittoria, private dining room, table 7, right now." I was already balancing 4 entrees for table 12. "Marco, I've got 6 tables in my section. Jessica's gone home sick." His voice dropped to a whisper. "These guests are important. Do you understand what I'm saying?" The way he emphasized important sent ice down my spine. After 6 years serving Chicago's elite at this upscale Italian restaurant, I'd learned to read the hierarchy of warnings. Important didn't mean wealthy CEOs or minor celebrities. It meant men whose business couldn't be discussed in daylight, whose names appeared in newspaper crime sections, whose very presence made management nervous. I needed this job. The rent on my studio apartment was due in 8 days, and my savings account held exactly $247. So I nodded, passed my current tables to another server, and straightened my burgundy apron with hands that wanted to tremble. "Who are they?" I asked, smoothing my hair back into its neat ponytail. Marco's eyes darted down the corridor toward the private rooms. "Associates of the owner." My stomach clenched. Everyone who worked at Impero knew about the owner, a phantom who never appeared during regular hours, but whose influence saturated every corner of the restaurant. Rumors circulated constantly: money laundering, shipping route control, connections to families whose names carried weight on both sides of the Atlantic. "And Vittoria?" Marco's grip tightened once more before he released me. "Whatever you hear in that room, you didn't hear it. Whatever language they speak, you don't understand. Clear?" I wanted to ask what he meant, but the intensity in his expression silenced me. Professional, efficient, invisible. Got it. The private dining rooms occupied the back hallway, 4 intimate spaces designed for guests who required discretion. Table 7 was the largest, the most secluded, the one with its own exit to the street. I paused outside the heavy wooden door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the crack beneath, I could see shadows moving, hear the rumble of male voices speaking in low, measured tones. Then I knocked twice and entered. 4 men sat around the table, all wearing suits that cost more than I'd make in 6 months. But it was the man at the head who commanded the space. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from Sicilian marble. Strong jaw, prominent cheekbones, a nose that had been broken at least once and healed slightly crooked. Gold glinted at his wrists, an expensive watch, understated cufflinks. His suit jacket hung open over a black dress shirt, and when his hazel eyes swept toward me, something in my chest constricted. He didn't just look at me, he assessed me, the way a predator evaluates whether something is prey or threat. "Buonasera, signori," I said, my voice steady despite my racing pulse. "I'm Vittoria, and I'll be serving you this evening. May I start with drinks?" The man to his right, older with silver at his temples, ordered wine without looking at me. The 2 younger men followed suit, their voices curt, dismissive. They barely registered my presence, but the man at the head kept his eyes on me as I moved around the table with my notepad. When I reached him last, he leaned back in his chair, one hand resting on the table, fingers drumming a slow, deliberate rhythm. "And for you, sir?" "Brunello," he said. His voice was deep, textured like whiskey and smoke. The faint accent beneath his English placed him somewhere between American-born and Italian-raised. "The 16 Reserve," I wrote it down, acutely aware that he was still watching me. Of course, I'll return with your drinks shortly. As I turned to leave, I heard it. The shift in language, the casual switch that people make when they believe they're speaking privately. Questa cameriera sembra più sveglia delle altre, the silver-haired man said in Sicilian dialect. This waitress seemed sharper than the others. Forse, the man at the head replied, his tone dismissive. Ma resta sempre solo una cameriera. Non capisce niente di quello che diciamo. Perhaps. But she's still just a waitress. She doesn't understand anything we're saying. The younger man to his left laughed. E probabilmente nemmeno sa dove si trova la Sicilia. And she probably doesn't even know where Sicily is. Perfetto, the older man continued. Allora possiamo parlare liberamente. Perfect. Then we can speak freely. Something inside me snapped. 6 years of keeping my head down. 6 years of pretending I didn't understand when men like these dismissed me as furniture, as decoration, as too stupid to matter. 6 years of hiding the language my grandfather had insisted I learn. Real Sicilian, not the watered-down Italian-American of my parents' generation, but the mountain dialect spoken in villages where words carried the weight of centuries. My grandfather's voice echoed in my memory, stern but loving. Non permettere mai che ti credano piccola, Vittoria. Mai. Never let them think you're small, Vittoria. Never. I placed the last menu on the table, then straightened, my hands steady, my expression calm. And I looked directly into the hazel eyes of the man who'd just dismissed me as too ignorant to understand. In perfect crystalline Sicilian, the kind that marked someone not just as a speaker, but as someone who'd learned at the feet of the old ones. I said, Mi dispiace deluderla, signore, ma comprendo ogni parola che ha detto. E se desidera insultare qualcuno nella sua lingua madre, dovrebbe prima assicurarsi che quella persona non sia la nipote di un giudice siciliano che parlava questo dialetto ogni giorno della sua vita. I'm sorry to disappoint you, sir, but I understand every word you've said. And if you wish to insult someone in your mother tongue, you should first ensure that person isn't the granddaughter of a Sicilian judge who spoke this dialect every day of his life. The room went utterly silent. The silver-haired man's wineglass stopped halfway to his lips. The younger men froze, their expressions shifting from casual arrogance to shock. Even the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. But it was the man at the head of the table whose reaction made my breath catch. His eyes, which had been dismissive moments ago, sharpened with something I couldn't name. Not anger, though there was heat there. Not embarrassment, though color rose slightly along his cheekbones. It was something more dangerous. Interest. He leaned forward slowly, his elbows resting on the table, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. When he spoke, his Sicilian was flawless, the accent even purer than his associates. E quale giudice sarebbe stato tuo nonno, ragazza coraggiosa? And which judge would your grandfather have been, brave girl? The shift from dismissal to respect in that single word, coraggiosa, brave, wasn't lost on me. In one exchange, I'd gone from invisible to something far more dangerous. Seen. Giudice Antonio Sabbatini, I replied, lifting my chin. Di Corleone. Judge Antonio Sabbatini, from Corleone. The reaction was immediate and electric. The silver-haired man's face went pale. One of the younger men muttered something under his breath that might have been a prayer or a curse, but the man at the head of the table, his expression transformed entirely. If you want to see if the granddaughter of a judge can survive the son of a mafia boss, make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss how this power struggle unfolds. The casual arrogance vanished, replaced by something infinitely more complex. Recognition, calculation, and what looked disturbingly like satisfaction. He rose from his chair with fluid grace, his height suddenly overwhelming in the intimate space. He was easily 6'2", broad-shouldered, built like someone who understood violence intimately. Antonio Sabbatini, he repeated, my grandfather's name rolling off his tongue with the reverence usually reserved for saints or martyrs. Il giudice che rifiutò di piegarsi, il giudice che mio padre. He trailed off deliberately, letting the unfinished sentence hang between us like a noose. The judge who refused to bend. The judge that my father. My blood turned to ice. The implication was clear. Quello stesso, I whispered, though my pulse was now hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. That very one. His smile was slow, dangerous, and entirely too knowing. Allora benvenuta, signorina Sabbatini. Io sono Valente Toscano, e lei ed io abbiamo molto di cui parlare. Then welcome, Miss Sabbatini. I am Valente Toscano, and you and I have much to discuss. The name hit me like a physical blow. Toscano. One of the oldest Sicilian families in Chicago. The family whose shipping routes controlled half the port. The family whose name appeared in federal investigations that mysteriously stalled. The family whose patriarch had ordered. My grandfather's voice from a conversation decades ago that I'd been too young to fully understand. Ai Toscano, mi hanno offerto il mondo per guardare dall'altra parte. Ho rifiutato e mi hanno tolto il mondo. The Toscanos offered me the world to look the other way. I refused, and they took my world from me. Valente Toscano was still watching me, his eyes tracking every micro-expression that crossed my face as I processed his identity. Torni con le nostre bevande, signorina Sabbatini, he said finally, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. E quando avrà finito il suo turno stasera, lei ed io avremo quella conversazione. Non è una richiesta. Return with our drinks, Miss Sabbatini, and when you've finished your shift tonight, you and I will have that conversation. This is not a request. I should have refused. Should have walked out of that room, removed my apron, and disappeared into Chicago's anonymous streets before this man, this heir to the empire my grandfather had died opposing, decided what to do with the granddaughter who'd just revealed herself in his territory. But something in Valente Toscano's eyes held me frozen. Not threat, though there was danger there. Not malice, though his smile carried edges sharp enough to cut. It was certainty, the look of a man who'd already decided my fate and was simply waiting for me to catch up. I nodded once and walked out of that private dining room with my spine straight and my hands steady on the door handle. The moment I reached the service corridor, Marco materialized beside me, his face ashen. Vittoria, what happened in there? What did you say to them? Nothing, I lied, my voice surprisingly calm. Just took their drink orders. They're speaking Sicilian now, rapidly, intensely. His eyes darted toward the closed door. And I heard your name, multiple times. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I pulled it out, frowning at the unknown Chicago number. The text message was in Sicilian. Non scappare, piccola giudice. Ti sto guardando. Don't run, little judge. I'm watching you. My head snapped up, scanning the restaurant. Through the small window in the private dining room door, I could see Valente Toscano standing with his phone in his hand, his eyes locked on mine across the distance. He raised his glass in a mock toast, his smile predatory. I had walked into that room, an invisible waitress trying to survive in a city that didn't care about me. I would walk out of it tonight as something far more dangerous, a woman who'd captured the attention of a man who never let anything he wanted slip away. And judging by the way Valente Toscano was watching me through that window, like a wolf who'd just caught the scent of something worth hunting, he wanted answers about the granddaughter of the judge his family had killed. The question was, would I survive giving them to him? Before you hear what happened next, hit that subscribe button and like this video. Because what Valente Toscano discovered about Vittoria that night would change everything, not just for her, but for every person who'd ever underestimated the waitress who spoke Sicilian like she was born to rule. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is reveal who you really are. And Vittoria Sabbatini was about to learn that lesson the hardest way possible. My shift ended at midnight, but I stayed until 12:47, wiping down already clean tables, reorganizing silverware, doing anything to delay walking into the Chicago night. The weight of my phone sat heavy in my pocket, that text message still glowing in my mind. Ti sto guardando. I'm watching you. I couldn't hide forever. I grabbed my coat, hands shaking as I pushed through Impero's front door. The side street was empty, streetlights casting orange pools across wet pavement. My car was parked 3 blocks away. That's when I saw him. Marcus Delacroix stood across the street, leaning against a lamppost. Tall, thin, expensively dressed. When our eyes met, he smiled and stepped toward me. 3 months. It had been 3 months since Marcus first requested my section at Impero. At first, it was flattering. Generous tips, polite conversation. Then came the notes. You have the most beautiful smile. I can't stop thinking about you. We're meant to know each other. The gifts followed. Flowers, chocolates, a bracelet I returned. When I declined his dinner invitation, everything shifted. The notes became insistent. Why won't you give me a chance? Don't ignore what we have. 2 weeks ago, I'd seen him outside my apartment at 6 a.m. Last week, he'd gotten my personal phone number somehow. Now, at 12:47 a.m., he was waiting outside my workplace. I turned sharply left instead of right, walking quickly toward the main avenue where there would be witnesses and light. Behind me, footsteps matched my pace. Vittoria, wait! I walked faster, keys clutched between my fingers. My car was in the opposite direction, but I couldn't lead him there. I just want to talk. Why do you keep running? I reached the corner, relief flooding through me at the sight of passing cars and a lit diner. But when I glanced back, Marcus was closer, his long legs eating up the distance. Vittoria, please. I know you're playing hard to get. A black SUV jumped the curb in front of me. I stumbled backward as 2 men in dark suits stepped out, placing themselves between Marcus and me. Marcus stopped, confusion and anger on his face. What the hell? Who are you? The front passenger door opened. Valente Toscano stepped onto the sidewalk, still in his dinner suit, tie loosened. In the harsh streetlight, his face looked carved from stone. Miss Sabbatini, he said, you seem to have attracted unwanted attention. I couldn't speak. Valente's gaze shifted to Marcus. And you are? Marcus drew himself up. I'm a friend. This is private, so I mind. Valente's voice dropped dangerously. Because Miss Sabbatini looks terrified, and you look like the reason. This is none of your business. One of Valente's men stepped forward. Marcus retreated instantly. Valente pulled out his phone, typed something, then looked at Marcus with contempt. Marcus Delacroix, son of Robert Delacroix, the developer. You've been following Miss Sabbatini for 12 weeks. 47 text messages to a number she never gave you. 6 visits outside her residence. Tonight you waited here 2 hours and 33 minutes. My blood ran cold. How did he know? Marcus paled. I don't know who you think. I'm the man telling you this ends tonight. No contact, no approaches, no driving past her building. Forget she exists. You can't, Valente smiled terrifyingly. Your father has 3 development projects pending city approval. Projects requiring cooperation from officials who happen to be my friends. I wonder how those approvals would fare if I expressed concerns about Robert Delacroix's son? Marcus went silent. Do we understand each other? Marcus nodded and practically ran away. Valente turned to me, cold authority melting into calculated interest. Get in the car, Miss Sabbatini. We need to talk. How did you know he was here? His smile was knowing. I told you I was watching. Did you think I was speaking metaphorically? He'd been having me followed. Had known about Marcus before tonight. Get in the car. You have a problem, Miss Sabbatini. And now I'm very interested in solving it. I looked at the open door, at Valente's extended hand, at the empty street where Marcus had disappeared. He knew my full name, my address, my shift schedule. He'd been watching me long before dinner. The question wasn't whether I was caught in Valente Toscano's web. The question was whether being caught was the only thing keeping me alive. The SUV moved through Chicago's empty streets in silence. I sat pressed against the door, hyper-aware of Valente beside me, his presence filling the back seat despite the physical distance between us. His men occupied the front, their eyes occasionally flicking to the rearview mirror. We didn't head toward my neighborhood. Instead, we drove north into the Gold Coast, past buildings I'd only seen from the outside. The SUV pulled into an underground garage beneath a glass tower that gleamed even in darkness. Where are we? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. My office. Valente stepped out, waiting for me to follow. We need privacy for this conversation. The elevator required a key card. It rose without stopping, numbers climbing past residential floors until we reached the penthouse. The doors opened directly into a space that wasn't an apartment. It was a command center disguised as luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, Lake Michigan stretching black and infinite beyond. Minimalist furniture, expensive art, and enough technology to run a small country. Valente shrugged off his jacket, draping it over a chair. Sit. I remained standing. I want to know why you were following me. Because 3 weeks ago you served table 7 during a very specific conversation. He moved to a bar cart, pouring whiskey into 2 glasses. Do you remember what we discussed? I don't eavesdrop on customers. His smile was slight, knowing. No, but you have excellent hearing, and an excellent memory. 2 men at that table mentioned a warehouse on Pier 47. They discussed shipping schedules, customs officials, container numbers. He handed me a glass I didn't take. You didn't react, but your hand hesitated for exactly 2 seconds when placing the breadbasket. My stomach dropped. I did remember that night. The conversation I'd pretended not to understand. The detail I'd filed away as none of my business. Marcus Delacroix isn't just a stalker with boundary issues, Valente continued, setting my untouched glass aside. He's connected to the Calabrese family, my rivals. They've been using him to monitor you because they think you overheard something valuable. That's insane. I'm a waitress. You're a waitress who speaks fluent Sicilian and has a photographic memory for conversations. He pulled out a tablet, swiping through images. You're also a waitress whose apartment has been watched for 2 weeks. He turned the screen toward me. The photographs stole my breath. Marcus outside my building at various times, morning, afternoon, late at night. But it was the final image that made my knees weak. Marcus in his car across from my apartment, a handgun visible on the passenger seat. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time, Valente said quietly. The Calabrese family thinks you know something. Whether you actually do is irrelevant. They'll take you, interrogate you, and when they realize you genuinely don't understand what you heard, they'll kill you anyway. To send me a message. I sank into the chair, my legs no longer supporting me. This can't be happening. It is happening. You have 2 choices. Valente leaned against his desk, arms crossed. Accept my protection, or keep pretending you're safe until the Calabrese family decides you're worth the risk of taking. Your protection. I looked up at him, anger cutting through fear. Your family killed my grandfather. You want me to trust you? Something flickered in his eyes. Acknowledgement, perhaps regret. My father ordered that hit. 30 years ago, I was 8 years old. His voice remained level. I won't insult your intelligence by apologizing for crimes I didn't commit. But I will tell you this. The Calabrese family won't care about your grandfather's legacy. They'll simply make you disappear. Why do you care what happens to me? Because you're caught in my war through no fault of your own. Because protecting civilians is how I'm different from men like my father. And because... He paused, his gaze intensifying. Because the granddaughter of Antonio Sabbatini deserves better than dying for a conversation she doesn't remember. The sincerity in his voice was almost worse than threats would have been. I need time to think. You have 24 hours. Valente straightened, pulling his phone from his pocket. My driver will take you home. Keep your doors locked. Don't go anywhere alone. And Miss Sabbatini? He looked up, his expression grave. The Calabrese family won't give you 24 hours. They'll move when they're ready, which could be tonight, tomorrow, or next week. The question is whether you'll be under my protection when they do. He nodded to his men, who moved toward the elevator. I stood, my mind racing through impossible choices. And if I accept your protection, what does that cost me? His smile was slight, dangerous. Everything and nothing, but you'll be alive to negotiate the terms. When protection comes from your family's enemy, is survival worth the price? Or is living in his debt another kind of death? Valente's driver dropped me outside my building at 2:17 a.m. The street looked normal, quiet, empty, the same faded brick facade I'd been coming home to for 8 months. I climbed the 3 flights to my studio apartment, key already in hand. The door was ajar. My heart stopped. I'd locked it. I always locked it. I pushed it open slowly, and the devastation stole my breath. My tiny apartment had been torn apart. Mattress slashed open, stuffing scattered across the floor. Kitchen cabinets emptied, dishes shattered, clothes ripped from hangers and strewn everywhere. Every drawer dumped, every shelf cleared. They'd been looking for something. My hands shook as I pulled out the phone Valente had given me, his number already programmed. It rang once. Miss Sabbatini. His voice was instantly alert despite the hour. My apartment. I couldn't finish the sentence. They were here. Are you inside? the sound of movement, sharp commands in the background. Yes, but they're gone. Get out, now. Go to the street and wait. His voice carried absolute authority. Don't touch anything. My men are 3 minutes away. I stumbled down the stairs, my legs barely supporting me. On the sidewalk, I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to stop shaking, trying to process that someone had been in my home, touching my things, searching through my life. 2 black SUVs arrived in under 3 minutes, just as Valente promised. 4 men swept into my building, while another stayed with me silent and vigilant. Then Valente himself appeared, somehow having crossed the city in impossible time. He took one look at my face and his expression hardened. They wanted to see what you knew, what you'd written down, recorded, saved. I don't know anything. They don't believe that. He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo one of his men had just sent. My bathroom mirror, a message written in lipstick. We know you remember. My knees buckled. Valente caught my arm, steady and solid. The decision has been made for you, he said quietly. You're not staying here tonight, or any night. Pack what you need. My men will secure the rest. 20 minutes later, I sat in Valente's SUV with a hastily packed duffel bag, watching my building disappear behind us. We drove to an estate north of the city. High walls, security gates, a sprawling property that probably had a name instead of just an address. The guest house sat separate from the main residence, all stone and glass and security that looked invisible but felt omnipresent. Inside was furnished like a luxury hotel, complete with a kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, bigger than my entire studio. This is temporary, Valente said, watching me take it in. Until we eliminate the threat. How do you eliminate a threat like the Calabrese family? His smile was cold. Carefully. I sank onto the sofa, exhaustion and adrenaline warring inside me. Why are you doing this? Really? Valente was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat across from me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. I had a sister, Isabella. She was 14 when a rival family took her to hurt my father. We found her 3 days later. His voice remained steady, but something in his eyes went dark. I was 17. I couldn't protect her because I wasn't strong enough, wasn't ruthless enough, wasn't willing to become what my father was. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me the only lesson that matters. Power is the only real protection. Your grandfather understood that differently. He had the power of law, of justice, of principle. He died because he wouldn't bend those principles. And you? I'm a bad man who survives by bending everything around me. He met my eyes. But we both understand honor, your grandfather and I. His honor got him killed. Mine keeps people alive. I wanted to argue, to defend my grandfather's choices, but exhaustion was winning. Where do I sleep? Through there. He stood, moving toward the door. My men patrol the grounds. You're safe here. As he reached the exit, I noticed something through the open doorway. A glimpse of the main house. A lit window. A room lined with filing cabinets. What's in there? My study. He paused, then added, Sleep, Miss Sabbatini. We'll discuss your situation in the morning. After he left, I should have collapsed into bed. Instead, curiosity pulled me to the window. Through the distance, I could see into that lit study. One of Valente's men was filing something away, and for just a moment, a photograph was visible. My grandfather in his judge's robes, standing outside a courthouse I recognized from my childhood. Valente Toscano hadn't just been tracking me. He'd been tracking the Sabbatini family for years. The question was why. When your enemy knows more about your family than you do, what else has he been hiding? And what does he plan to do with all those secrets? I found Valente in his study the next morning, surrounded by files that he closed the moment I entered. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, making the room look less threatening than it had at night. Coffee? He gestured to a full pot on the sidebar. Answers. I remained in the doorway. Why do you have files on my family? He leaned back in his chair, studying me. Because 30 years ago, my father made a decision that haunts this family. Judge Antonio Sabbatini was offered a choice: accept payment to look the other way on certain shipping manifests, or face consequences. He chose integrity. He chose death. Yes. Valente's voice was quiet. And I've spent the last 15 years trying to atone for sins I didn't commit, but inherited nonetheless. He opened a folder, slid it across the desk. Inside were receipts, bank transfers, photographs of orphanages and schools in Sicily. All anonymous donations made in Judge Sabbatini's name. $2 million over 15 years, he said. Children's charities, legal aid funds, scholarships for law students. Everything he would have supported. I stared at the papers, my hands trembling. Blood money. Yes, but blood money that's fed hungry children and educated future judges. His eyes met mine. Your grandfather can't be brought back. But his legacy doesn't have to end with his murder. The sincerity in his voice cracked something in my chest. I wanted to hate him purely, completely, but standing there, looking at evidence of 15 years of quiet penance, hatred felt more complicated. I need purpose here, I said finally. I can't just hide in your guest house like a prisoner. You're not a prisoner. You're protected. He paused. But if you want purpose, I have a conference call in an hour with associates in Palermo. My usual translator is unavailable. That's how it began. I sat beside Valente during calls, translating not just words but subtext, the undertones that revealed true intentions. My years serving Chicago's elite had taught me to read people, to catch the hesitation before a lie, the emphasis that signaled deception. During a dinner meeting 3 days later, a supposed business partner spoke enthusiastically in Italian about shipping partnerships while his eyes kept darting to his phone. I caught the discrepancy between his words and body language, passed Valente a note. He's stalling. Someone's listening. Valente ended the meeting early. Later, we learned the man had been wearing a wire for the Calabrese family. You saved me from a federal investigation, Valente said that evening, watching me across his office. How did you know? His Italian was too perfect. Native speakers don't perform their language. They live it. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, interest, something warmer I didn't want to name. The next afternoon, he took me to his private shooting range in the estate's basement. If you're in my world, you need to know how to protect yourself. His hands guided mine, positioning my grip on the pistol. Breathe out slowly, squeeze, don't pull. The gun fired, recoil shocking through my arms. The target showed a hit left of center. Not bad. His voice was close to my ear. Your grandfather ever take you shooting? He taught me chess, said strategy mattered more than weapons. He was right. Valente loaded another magazine. But strategy doesn't help when someone's already pulled the trigger. We spent 2 hours there, trading stories between rounds. His childhood in Sicily before his father brought the family to Chicago. My summers in Corleone, helping my grandfather tend his garden. We avoided the obvious, that our family's histories were written in blood, and found unexpected common ground in shared memories of a homeland we'd both left behind. I was reloading when Valente's phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message. "What is it?" He showed me the screen. A photograph of the guest house where I'd been sleeping, taken from outside the estate walls. The message below was in Italian. La nipote del giudice dorme bene? Presto dormirà per sempre. Does the judge's granddaughter sleep well? Soon she'll sleep forever. They know I'm here. Yes. Valente's jaw tightened. Which means we're out of time. When the enemy finds you in your safest place, where do you run? And what happens when running means choosing between freedom and the man who's becoming more than just your protector? The security changes happened overnight. Armed guards at every entrance. New cameras covering every angle. A man stationed outside the guest house 24 hours a day. I couldn't walk to the main house without an escort. Couldn't step into the garden without surveillance tracking my every move. By the third day, I was suffocating. I found Valente in his study, reviewing security footage. This is insane. I can't live like this. You can't live at all if the Calabrese family gets to you. He didn't look up from the monitors. So what? I'm just supposed to stay locked in your guest house forever? Never work, never leave, never have a life? Until the threat is neutralized, yes. Something inside me snapped. You're keeping me safe, but I'm still in a cage. A prettier cage than my studio apartment, but still a cage. Now he looked at me, his expression hardening. A cage that keeps predators out is better than freedom that gets you killed. That's not your decision to make. It is when you're under my protection. He stood, his height suddenly overwhelming in the confined space. You think I want this? You think I enjoy having armed guards disrupting my property, changing security protocols every 6 hours, treating my own home like a fortress? Then let me leave. I'll disappear, go somewhere they can't find me. There is nowhere they can't find you. His voice dropped dangerously low. The Calabrese family has resources across 3 countries. They'll track you to whatever city you run to, and when they find you alone, unprotected, they'll make you disappear in ways that ensure you're never found. Is that the freedom you want? I want to make my own choices. Your choices got you into this situation. The words came out harsh, then he stopped, closing his eyes briefly. When he opened them, something had shifted. I had a sister who wanted to make her own choices too. I went still, remembering what he'd told me about Isabella. She was 14. She wanted to go to a friend's house for a sleepover. Normal teenage request. My father said no, too dangerous, too exposed. She begged. I intervened. His voice went hollow. I told my father she deserved some independence, some normalcy, that we couldn't keep her locked away forever. He listened to me. Valente. They took her that night, grabbed her off the street 3 blocks from her friend's house. We found her 3 days later in an abandoned warehouse, and I was the one who identified the body because my father couldn't bear to look at what they'd done to her. His hands clenched into fists. I gave her the freedom to make her own choice, and it killed her. The raw pain in his voice cracked something open in my chest. I moved closer, my anger dissolving into understanding. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I chose her independence over her safety. I chose what felt right over what would keep her alive. He looked at me, and his eyes held such guilt it was almost unbearable to witness. So forgive me if I'm controlling, if I'm overbearing, if I build cages instead of offering freedom, because I learned that protection requires control, and I won't watch someone else die because I respected their independence more than their life. I reached up, my hand touching his face. I'm not Isabella. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. But I can't lose you either. The admission hung between us, heavy with meaning neither of us was ready to name. His hand covered mine, holding it against his cheek. We stood there, the space between us charged with tension that had been building since that first night in the restaurant. I didn't know who moved first. Maybe we both did. But suddenly, his mouth was on mine, and I was kissing him back with all the fear and frustration and impossible attraction I'd been fighting. His hands tangled in my hair. Mine gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss was desperate, dangerous, tasting like whiskey and bad decisions and something that felt terrifyingly like need. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. This complicates everything, I whispered. Everything was already complicated. A sharp knock interrupted us. Luca, Valente's right-hand man, entered without waiting for permission, his face grave. We have a problem. Someone inside leaked Vittoria's location to the Calabrese family. Valente's entire body tensed. Who? Still investigating. But boss, they know the security protocols, guard rotations, blind spots and camera coverage. Luca's eyes were hard. Whoever it is has access to everything. When the enemy is inside the walls, who can you trust? And when the man protecting you is the one you're falling for, which is more dangerous? The threat outside or the one growing between you? Valente's plan was simple and terrifying. Use me as bait. We announce our attendance at the Children's Hospital Charity Gala tomorrow night, he explained, his strategy laid out like chess moves. Public event, high profile, hundreds of witnesses. The traitor will pass the information to the Calabrese family, and we'll identify who makes the call. And when the Calabrese family shows up to kill me, they won't. Too many civilians, too much exposure. His eyes met mine. Trust me. I wore emerald silk that cost more than 6 months of my old rent. My hair swept up to expose the delicate wire hidden behind my ear. Valente stood beside me in a tuxedo that made him look like he belonged in old-world Sicily, dangerous and elegant in equal measure. The gala was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, Chicago's elite writing checks for sick children while discussing stock portfolios. Valente's men were positioned throughout, invisible among the crowd. Stay close, he murmured, his hand at the small of my back as we moved through the ballroom. I smiled, played the part of his companion, and listened. The wire transmitted everything to Luca, who monitored from a van outside, tracking phone signals, recording conversations. Angelo Moretti approached us near the silent auction tables. Mid-50s, one of Valente's senior associates, someone who'd been with the family for 20 years. He greeted Valente warmly, complimented my dress, made small talk about the charity's work. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, excused himself, and walked toward the balcony. Follow him, Valente said quietly, his smile never faltering for the crowd around us. I moved through the ballroom, keeping Angelo in sight. On the balcony, he made a call, speaking rapidly in Italian. She's here. Green dress, Northeast corner. Toscano has 6 men inside, more outside. If you move now, my blood turned to ice. I touched the wire, knowing Luca was hearing everything. Angelo turned, saw me standing there, and his expression went cold. How much did you hear? Enough. I backed toward the ballroom. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. You've been a problem since the day you opened your mouth in that restaurant. The Calabrese family is offering $2 million for information on Toscano's operations. You're the key to everything, Angelo. Valente's voice cut through the night air. He stood in the balcony doorway, flanked by 2 of his men. Let her go. Angelo pulled a gun instead, pressing it against my ribs. The ballroom behind us continued its elegant chaos, completely unaware. Your father destroyed my brother, sent him to prison for life on false testimony. Angelo's voice shook with decades of rage. I've waited 20 years for revenge. My father's sins aren't mine. His empire is. His blood is. Angelo pulled me backward toward the balcony railing. The Calabrese family will tear apart everything he built, starting tonight. That's when the screaming started. Armed men in dark suits burst through the ballroom's main entrance. Guests scattered, champagne glasses shattering, tables overturning. The Calabrese family hadn't waited for a clean opportunity. They'd brought war to a charity gala. Valente's eyes met mine across the distance, and I saw calculation shift to something more primal. Protection at any cost. Luca, get the civilians out. He spoke into his cuff. Then to his men. Contain them. No shots near the crowd. Angelo laughed, the sound unhinged. You can't control this. You can't save her and them. Gunfire erupted somewhere near the entrance. More screaming. The beautiful ballroom transformed into chaos. Chicago's elite diving under tables, staff running for exits, armed men advancing through the crowd. Valente moved toward me, but Angelo pressed the gun harder against my ribs. One more step and I'll... I drove my elbow backward into his stomach, exactly as Valente had taught me. Angelo's grip loosened. I dropped, rolled away, and Valente's man had Angelo disarmed in seconds. But the Calabrese family's men were still advancing, and we were trapped on a balcony with 300 terrified civilians behind us. Valente grabbed my hand. Can you run in that dress? Yes. His smile was fierce, dangerous. Then stay close. We're fighting our way out. When the war comes to you and innocent lives hang in the balance, do you run or fight? And when the man beside you is willing to burn the world to keep you safe, what does that make you? Gunfire echoed through the ballroom as Valente's men engaged the Calabrese forces. Civilians scrambled toward exits while security tried to maintain control. Glass shattered, tables overturned, the elegant gala transformed into a war zone. Valente pulled me through a service corridor, his gun drawn, his body positioned between me and danger. Luca appeared from a side entrance, blood streaking his temple. Boss, we're outnumbered. 8 of theirs, 4 of ours still standing. We need to extract you now. The civilians? Police are 2 minutes out. We need to move. Valente turned to me, his expression shifting to something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. Not for himself, but for me. Paolo. He gestured to his most trusted guard. Take her to the Wisconsin safe house. Use the back exit. Don't stop until you're across state lines. What? No. I grabbed his arm. I'm not leaving you. Vittoria, listen to me. No, you listen. I moved closer, my voice fierce despite the chaos around us. You said your sister died because you let her make her own choice. You've spent 15 years drowning in guilt over giving her freedom instead of safety. Well, I'm making my choice right now. I'm staying. You'll die. Maybe. But I'll die making my own decision, not living the rest of my life knowing I ran while you fought my battle. I held his gaze. You taught me to shoot. Let me use it. Something broke in his expression. The control, the calculation, the careful distance he maintained. You're insane. I learned from the best. He pulled a compact pistol from his ankle holster, pressed it into my hands. Stay behind me. Aim for center mass. Don't hesitate. We moved back toward the ballroom. Valente's remaining men had created a defensive position near the main entrance. The Calabrese forces had taken cover behind overturned tables. Between them, terrified guests huddled, trapped in the crossfire. "Toscano!" A voice cut through the chaos. A man emerged from behind cover, late 50s, expensive suit now torn, authority radiating from every movement. Dante Calabrese himself. "You've cost me 4 men tonight. This ends now." "You brought war to a charity gala," Valente called back. "You threatened an innocent woman. This ends when you withdraw." "She's not innocent. She's leverage. She's under my protection. Touch her, and I'll burn your entire operation to the ground." Dante laughed, but there was calculation in his eyes. "You don't have the resources for a full war. Try me." The standoff stretched, tension crackling between the two men. Then Dante's gaze shifted to me, to the gun in my hands, to the way I stood beside Valente instead of cowering behind him. "The judge's granddaughter has teeth," he observed. "Interesting." "This is your last chance to walk away," Valente said quietly. "Because if you force my hand, I'll make sure every shipping route you control becomes federal property. Every customs official you've paid turns witness. Every warehouse you own burns. You'd destroy half the city's port operations for one woman." "Yes." The single word carried absolute conviction. Dante Calabrese studied Valente, then me, then the destruction around us. Police sirens wailed closer. Federal agents would follow. This kind of public violence attracted attention no criminal enterprise could afford. "A truce," Dante said finally. "She's no longer a target. You forget about the Pier 47 conversation. We both walk away." "And Marcus Delacroix?" Dante's expression went cold. "Already handled. He became a liability when he let obsession override discretion. You'll find him in the Chicago River by morning." The casual mention of murder should have horrified me. Instead, I felt only grim satisfaction that Marcus would never terrorize another woman. "Done," Valente agreed. "But understand this. If you ever target her again, our truce becomes a war you can't win." Dante nodded once. His men withdrew as police flooded the building. Valente lowered his gun, pulled me against him, his heart pounding against my cheek. "You're insane," he repeated. "I'm alive. We both are. This changes everything." I looked up at him, at this dangerous man who'd become my protector, my partner, something more I wasn't ready to name. "Good. When you choose to fight instead of run, when you stand beside your enemy's son against his enemies, what does that make you? And when the war ends, what happens to the warriors?" 6 weeks after the gala, I sat across from Valente during a video conference with associates in Milan. They were negotiating shipping contracts, speaking rapidly in Italian mixed with Sicilian dialect. One man kept emphasizing his reliability, while his eyes darted nervously off-screen. I passed Valente a note. He's being coerced. Someone's threatening him. Valente's expression didn't change. Gentlemen, let's table this discussion. Marco, I'd like to speak with you privately. After the call ended, and Valente extracted the truth, the man's daughter was being used as leverage by a rival. He looked at me with something like pride. You've saved 3 operations in the last month. You're not just my translator anymore. What am I? My partner. The word settled between us, heavy with meaning that went beyond business. 2 days later, we flew to Sicily. The countryside rolled past our rental car. Olive groves, ancient stone walls, mountains rising against impossibly blue sky. The cemetery in Corleone was small, overlooked by cypress trees that had stood for centuries. My grandfather's grave was simple. Antonio Sabbatini, beloved husband, father, judge, 1934 to 1993. I placed white lilies on the stone, my throat tight. Valente stood back, giving me space until I gestured for him to join me. He would hate what I am, Valente said quietly. What my family is. Yes, I agreed. But maybe he'd understand what you're trying to become. What am I becoming? I looked at him, this dangerous man who'd protected me, trusted me, transformed from my family's enemy into something I couldn't live without. Someone who uses power to protect instead of destroy. Someone who honors the past by trying to be better than it. He'd hate what I was, Valente corrected gently, but he'd respect what I'm choosing. I took his hand, our fingers intertwining over my grandfather's grave. He taught me that the most dangerous people are the ones you underestimate. I think he'd appreciate the irony of us. Valente's smile was soft, genuine. The judge's granddaughter and the mafia boss's son. It's a terrible romance novel. It's our life. Back in Chicago, we returned to where it all began. Impero restaurant glowed with its usual Friday night elegance. But when I walked through the doors, I wasn't wearing a burgundy apron and sensible shoes. I wore Valentino and my grandmother's Sicilian gold, intricate chains that marked me as someone who belonged to the old country, to tradition, to power. Marco's eyes widened in recognition, then shock. Other staff members stopped, whispers spreading like wildfire. The invisible waitress had returned transformed. Stories like Vittoria's remind us never to underestimate anyone. If you enjoyed this journey, hit subscribe and let us know what story we should tell next. Valente spoke to the manager, his voice carrying authority that needed no volume. Miss Sabbatini will be coordinating my business dinners from now on. I suggest you treat her with the respect her position demands. Of course, Mr. Toscano. Of course. We walked to table 7, that private room where I'd revealed myself, where everything had changed. But now the door opened for me. The seat at the head of the table was offered to me. Wine was poured for me. Valente sat beside me, not across. Equal, not superior. Mio nonno diceva sempre che le persone più pericolose sono quelle che sottovaluti, I said, watching his eyes light with understanding. Penso che apprezzerebbe l'ironia. My grandfather always said the most dangerous people are the ones you underestimate. I think he'd appreciate the irony. Valente raised his glass. Alla famiglia, quella che abbiamo perso e quella che abbiamo scelto. To family, the one we lost and the one we chose. Our glasses touched, crystals singing in the private room, where a waitress had once served a mafia boss, where she'd spoken Sicilian and shattered both their carefully constructed worlds. Now she sat beside him as his partner, his equal, wearing her grandmother's gold and her grandfather's legacy. She'd found belonging without losing herself, found love without surrendering her pride, found power in choosing her own fate instead of accepting the one written in family blood. Outside, Chicago glittered. Inside table 7, two people who should have been enemies toasted to a future neither had planned, but both had chosen. And in the language of their grandparents, they spoke of tomorrow. Sometimes the most powerful transformation isn't changing who you are. It's becoming who you were always meant to be. And sometimes the most dangerous love is the one that makes you more yourself, not less. Thank you for watching this story of courage, transformation, and dangerous love. If you believe that your past doesn't define your future, that the most dangerous people are the ones you underestimate, and that sometimes the enemy's son becomes your greatest protector, hit that subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. Only those afraid to challenge their assumptions about good and evil won't join us.